When you're staring at a stack of battery specs and wondering whether any of them will actually survive a weekend on the road, the hesitation is real. You've probably heard the hype about LiFePO4 and the promise of thousands of cycles, but you also know that a $2,000 battery that never gets used is just a heavy piece of metal. I'm going to walk through the JHKJ 12V lithium iron phosphate battery the way I would if I were setting up my own RV, pointing out where the value really shows up, where the hidden trade-offs sit, and who should actually consider spending the cash. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, the biggest question most people have is whether a lithium iron phosphate pack can replace the lead-acid deep-cycle battery they've been using for years. The JHKJ unit comes in a range of capacities 150Ah to 300Ah, and the chemistry is the same automotive-grade LiFePO4 you see in many newer electric vehicles. The key benefit here is the built-in battery management system, or BMS. That little circuit board sits inside the case and constantly monitors each cell, preventing overcharge, overdischarge, and short circuits. In practice, that means you can hook the battery up to a solar charge controller or a shore power charger without worrying about blowing the pack if you forget to disconnect something. It also lets you mount the battery in any orientation, upright on its side, even upside down without compromising safety. For someone who wants a clean install in a cramped RV cabinet, that flexibility is a genuine time saver. Now, let's talk about daily usability. Imagine you've just parked at a state park, you've got a 200-watt solar array on the roof, and you want to keep the fridge, a few LED lights, and a small water pump running through the night. With a 300Ah LiFePO4 pack, you're looking at roughly 3,600 watt-hours of usable energy. The chemistry lets you draw about 80% of the rated capacity without harming the cells. That translates to a fridge running for a full 24-hour cycle, a couple of lights, and still leaving a cushion for a laptop or a phone charger. In contrast, a comparable lead-acid deep cycle would need to be oversized to avoid deep discharge, and you'd lose a lot of that capacity to sulfation over time. The JHKJ's claim of over 3,500 charge cycles isn't just marketing fluff. It's a realistic number that shows up when you compare the degradation curve of lithium versus lead-acid. Over a 5-year period, you could be looking at a battery that still holds about 90% of its original capacity, whereas a traditional AGM would likely be down to 70% or less. One practical strength that shows up in real-world use is the low self-discharge rate. If you're the type who parks the RV for a month at a time and then drives off, you'll notice that the LiFePO4 pack loses only a few percent per month, whereas a lead-acid will bleed off 510% in the same span. That makes the JHKJ a reliable backup for emergency lighting or a small inverter even if you don't charge it regularly. The built-in BMS also has temperature sensors, so if you ever store the battery in a cold garage, it will prevent charging when the ambient temperature drops below the safe threshold, protecting the cells from damage. Of course, there are trade-offs you need to be aware of before you click Add to Cart. The upfront price is the most obvious hurdle. A 300Ah LiFePO4 battery from JHKJ runs well into the high three figures, and while you're saving on fuel and on the eventual replacement of a lead-acid set, the initial outlay can feel steep for a budget-conscious traveler. Weight is another factor. Although lithium is lighter than lead-acid per amp-hour, a 300Ah pack still weighs around 70 pounds, which is something you'll need to consider when you're loading up a small trailer or a boat. The BMS is a safety net, but it also imposes a hard limit on the maximum discharge current. The spec sheet lists a continuous discharge of 200 amps, which is plenty for most RV appliances, but if you plan to run a hydro welder or a large air conditioner off the same battery, you could hit that ceiling and trigger a cutoff. In those niche scenarios, you might need to pair the LiFePO4 unit with a secondary battery bank or a supercapacitor buffer. Who should actually buy the JHKJ battery? If you're an RV owner who lives on the road for months at a time, runs a solar array, and wants to eliminate the regular maintenance that comes with topping off lead-acid water, this is a solid fit. Boaters who need a rugged, vibration-resistant power source will also appreciate the ability to mount the pack in any direction and the built-in protection against overcharging from a marine charger. Tiny house enthusiasts who rely on a combination of solar and grid-off power will find the high cycle life and low self-discharge a real convenience. In short, anyone who values long-term reliability, wants to simplify their charging setup, and can absorb the higher upfront cost will see the most benefit.